Hello there, Sarah from17 once again. This is my Dark Souls 3 wishlist. I sat down, I wrote a bunch of things that I thought would be pretty cool to have in the new Dark Souls. I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did for the Dark Souls 2 wishlist, because I'm not paying that much attention to Dark Souls 3, because I'm actually not that excited for it. And that might get a few gasps from people, but I got way too excited for Dark Souls 2, so I'm trying to temper my expectations for this one, so that I don't go into it wanting, you know, just amazingness, and getting slightly less than that, so the fall won't be as far this time. If there is a fall at all, it could be the best game ever made, we don't know. So I'm going to take you through a list of things that I jotted down off the top of my head when I was thinking the other day to myself what would be cool in Dark Souls 3. And as I've already mentioned, there's going to be a little footnote here saying I haven't checked any of the implementations of the new features in this game, so some of these might already exist, they might have already been stated, but I haven't checked it, so there you go. But feel free to leave your inclusions of what you would like in the game in the comment section. It's always fun reading that stuff, and let's get on with it, shall we? So my first one says, take only the omnidirectional roll, the 4 rings, the guard break mechanic, and various menu utilities from Dark Souls 2. Everything else, take from Dark Souls 1 and improve them. So this is a pretty simple thing. I want this to be a sequel to Dark Souls, not Dark Souls 2. I want this to control like Dark Souls Evolved, not Dark Souls 2 Evolved, and I want the improvements that Dark Souls 2 made that I really got behind and felt were great, as the ones I mentioned, implemented in the engine and the movement and the awesomeness of the original Soul. That to me is gravy, and I'm really excited to see that implemented. Hopefully. We will see. The next one is make covenants and the Book of Guilty mean something. Warring covenants results could influence and affect the world state both aesthetically and mechanically. So I love the idea of covenants, I love the idea of the Book of the Guilty, I love the idea of having a presence in the online realm in Dark Souls. It can add to the lore, it can add to the legend, it can add to so many things, and I just don't think they've ever really done it well enough. They've tried various things, it just doesn't come across that way. It would be so cool to have the covenants really truly mean something, and if they affected the world, just imagine a world dominated by dark spirits, you know, by invaders, like dark wraiths, straight up just, it could make the world darker, it could give it a weather effect that only happens, it could have it populate different enemies, there could be harder enemies, there could be better drop rates, there could be more traps, there could be more NPC invasions, there could be so many things. You know, it's literally endless, the possibilities, and I think the thing that inspired this was Mortal Kombat 10. In Mortal Kombat 10, you pick a faction when you first start playing the game, and it allows you to level up points to this faction and do these unique faction fatalities. And then at the end of the week or something, there's this big clash to see which faction performed best, and all the stuff you did that added faction points, and everybody else in the world who's on your faction, all adds to this collective number, and there's a big war between the factions that you can sometimes compete in doing various things, and then there's a winner decided, and whoever is in that faction gets rewarded like experience and coins and weird shit. And I think that's a great idea. It gives this feeling of both uniformity and meaning to the online components, and that's a fighting game. So this is just an RPG with, you know, action elements in it, so this should be even easier to have this kind of thing matter. And if they could make it, I think it could just keep people playing a lot longer than perhaps Dark Souls 2 did, or even Dark Souls 1. I think it could be really, really cool. So the next one is an improvised bonfire from a rare consumable. This is something I've wanted in every Souls game because I hate the Runback. I am a massive fan of these games, however I have never liked the checkpoints. Never. Demon Souls, hated them. Dark Souls, hated them. Dark Souls 2, hated them. Bloodborne, hated them. Every single one. And a lot of people will consider me as not a fan because I don't like the, oh, you've got to run back through everything and got to keep doing it. It's that repetition. It's that, oh, it feels so good to overcome thing. I've never liked it. I don't get a better feeling having spent more time running to the boss than I did fighting the boss. If I can run past all the enemies without taking damage easily, where's the fucking challenge? Where's the learning there? There's no learning. I don't need to learn. I can do it. When I get to a boss and I can't see his moves because I'm already fucking dead, that's the difficulty. I don't need this bullshit all the time. And it stems from uniquely my mentality of, I would rather spend 10 hours on a 2-minute section that's got a good checkpoint than 30 minutes on a sequence that when you die you have to play 15 minutes again. Because I just don't like long steads of gameplay. I never have, I never will. And we're so pampered now that it's just something you don't generally have to put up with. But I am an immediate kind of guy. I want it now, I want to try it here. I don't want a cutscene, I don't want to sit through shit, I want to do it. So, like a save state in a Dark Souls would be my dream. In 10-15 years when we're emulating these games and I can save state anywhere, it's going to be the best thing in the world. Because I have no enjoyment going back through an area I've already conquered. It's the boss that I want to do. And an improvised bonfire is exactly what I want. Just the ability to be like, this boss is tough. I want to learn him now. I want to spend a few hours getting hit by everything he does. I want to learn how it affects me. I want to learn how to dodge it. I want to learn how to block it. I want to learn if there's anything I can do to position myself to get out of the way of it. Where's its hitbox? Where's its hurtbox? How much damage does it do when I wear this armor? I want to know everything. And running back to learn this bullshit is annoying as fuck. Like, it's the only time in any game that I would condone using either a cheat engine or modded stats to do the stuff that you can only do without that bullshit runback. And that's the only time I would ever do it, which is why developers, when they're making a game, they go into debug mode where you can't fucking die, you've got a sword that does 1,000,000 damage and fires unicorns. Like, they test the game in that so they can see how things work, and then they get the poor people to come in and do the runback for them later. And that is literally the type of stuff that my mind works with on almost every level. So an improvised bonfire makes that amazing. And I've heard somewhere, just from the really, really early footage, that there might be something like this in the game. And I don't mind if it's rare. I don't mind if it's like a divine blessing, or, you know, if it's like, what's like the rarest thing in these games? Like a vagrant. Imagine that, that would fucking suck. There's people who've played this game hundreds of hours, never seen a vagrant. Stupid things. But just, maybe if there's only 3 every new game cycle, but you can get one really early, that's all it'd need. Because if you think about it like this, where would you want a checkpoint in Dark Souls 1? So for me personally, I can put up with all the bullshit up to maybe Ornstein and Smough. Ornstein and Smough are the first boss that'll kill me if I'm having a bad day, if I get a bad pattern, or whatever insert excuse here. So a checkpoint there would be okay, but I don't really need that one because I don't mind the runback. That's one of those runbacks that I've learnt to understand because of all the, you know, Soul Level 1 playthroughs I've done. No pyromancy, no this, no that. Four Kings. I hate that elevator. Absolutely hate that elevator. If it was just the run, I'd be okay, because it's another runback that I've actually grown to understand and kind of like, just because I can formulate what I'm going to do and boom. But that would be the first place for me. Four Quings, the Quan version of Kings. No, on that bottom step before you drop in, boom, that'd be fantastic. Better Chaos is a boss that will kill you sometimes because, you know, you got unlucky, or you mistimed something, or the detection was weird, or you fell down a hole. Like, that is another one. I would do that at the door, because that is a shitty boss fight. I've never liked it. And then the last one for me would be Gwyn, because I hate running through the kiln. I've always hated running through the kiln. I love the area, I love the enemies, I hate that run back. On some of my runs, Gwyn can kill me in one hit. If I go for a parry and I fuck it up, I'm dead. And then I have to run back again. And Gwyn has the ability to stun lock you, so if you're trying to, you know, toggle parry him and mess around with stuff like that, you die so quickly that you're always doing the run back. And then when you do kill him, it didn't even take as long as the run back. So that is one that I would love to do, even though, you know, traditionally Gwyn's not a very tough boss. But I've gone on way too long for this point. I think that this is designed for me, if this exists, and if it does, I will kiss Mr. Miyazaki-san, because fuck me, dude, I love you. Please, please do that. I bet there'll be other people like, oh, I don't think anyone should use that. It's complete antithesis to the source. Yes. Well, fuck you. But that's your opinion, so, you know, feel free to revel in it. So the next one is randomly generated white, blue, black, and red phantoms measured on your level and gear that can substitute both PvP and cooperative experiences / rewards. So this is another one that's essentially for the people whose internet sucks dick, or for the people whose character is outside of a bracket that's acceptable to do any of the things I just mentioned. So, in Dark Souls 1, I would love nothing more than to constantly get invaded by NPCs. because I love fighting NPCs on that game, and there are many times where I try and do online invasions and there's no traffic. I don't know if it's my connection, I don't know if it's because there's nobody on at that time. It's a load of variables that mean I spend more time waiting than I do playing, and that is something I hate. With this, it could be amazing. They could drop cool things, unique things, resources, weapons. They could do so many things with this. And then on the flip side, how many times have you wanted... Like, this is a great example. Scholar of the First Sin. I need to get so many Sunlight Medals to level up the Covenant to get that achievement for getting all the something bullshit. I think it's a spell I need. No one's at my level. I put my sign down at Fog Doors and nobody summons me. So I physically can't do it. Dark Souls 1, which is a good game, enabled you to get those medallions with Solaire. It enabled you to farm them off certain enemies. It enabled you to find them in the world. Dark Souls 2, you can farm them, but it's worse than farming slabs on Dark Souls 1. Like, the drop rate is absolutely astronomically stupid. I've spent more hours doing that than I have most things in that game, because that is a fucking grind fest, that game, and I hate it for it. This would alleviate that, because you would always have somebody to summon, to help with, and get those rewards, and I think it would just, it'd make it so much better than it already is. It would augment a game and improve it in every way. Sure, would there be ways to exploit it? Definitely. There'd be people summoning, like, 3 white phantoms and waiting for invaders, but if this is Dark Souls 1, you can't do that. Okay. No, you can do that, sorry, can't you? I think you can do that, 3... It's been a long time, good god. And I never summoned phantoms, so... I think you can summon 3 phantoms. You might not be able to, folks, so just, you know, let me off. Suffice to say, if it were Dark Souls 1, I'm going to backstab the tits off those phantoms, and when that other guy gets behind me to try and backstab me, I'm going to parry him, because he doesn't know that that's how this works, and I will win. Dark Souls 2, I'll be dead before I've even finished rolling, so I wouldn't even bother with it. But I just think it would be great, and if it brings back ganking, doesn't bother me at all, because I'll just go in and I'll bring whatever I can to fuck them up. I'll get a Chaos Rapier, I'll have my Darkwood Grain Ring, like, bring it on, bitches, let's dance. It's fun stuff. Next one. Improved combo ability between command and normals. Certain combinations could result in a specific, unique third attack. So this is a fancy way of saying it would be nice if the pattern in which you press the buttons came to different results combo-wise. So everybody knows in these games you can press R1 to do your standard attack, then you can press R2, and on certain weapons it will transition quite swiftly into an R2. Additionally, you can press R2 again if you have enough stamina, and it'll do an extra move that's unique to having just pressed the R2. All I want is this, but elaborated on. And it's so easy to do, because look at Devil May Cry, look at Bayonetta, look at Ninja Gaiden, look at God of War. They have a light button, they have a heavy button. That is the exact same thing as having R1 and R2. If you press 3 R1s and then R2, it should be a specific R2. If you press 1 R1 and then R2, it should be a different specific R2. And all this does is add depth for people who want it. The people who do nothing but R1 spam, who wear the heaviest armour and just Estus chug their way through every fucking situation, summoning their buddies, they're fine. They will never discover this. These are the people who've beat the game and never realised you could roll attack, or backstab attack, or how to jump attack, and it didn't bother them because they had fun and they got what they needed. They're perfectly fine. For everybody else who wants to know this stuff, who wants to have cool moments in PvP where people are using unique attacks and it's all super cool, it's just gravy, baby. Simple stuff. And with these new, what are they called, like combat arts or something, weapon arts, there's these new abilities in the new game that sound really interesting, but I want them to be really fucking interesting. I don't want, oh, now you can do the Drake Sword, you know, Shockwave. Great, we've already done that. I want it to be legit, essentially. So, weapons and armor actually break visually. So this is a big one for me. If you saw my Dark Souls 2 wishlist, a lot of people thought it was cruel, because I like Dark Souls when it is at its most punishing. So I had a lot of stuff in that people were like, you're a fucking maniac, why would anybody want that? Well, I did at the time. Funnily enough, the game that Dark Souls 2 became, if that stuff I wanted was in it, I would have probably hated it, because it didn't control like the game I loved. And that's just me, but it's true. So with this, imagine you're in the middle of a fight, and your sword breaks 2 inches up the blade. How fucking cool would that be? That moment where you shit your pants because you're in trouble and you have to do something, unless you're really good at swapping weapons and then you're fine. But we're on about like a ideal cinematic movie moment here. Your opponent sees that your sword is essentially a penknife now, and they come at you super aggressive to get that kill. It would be the coolest thing in the world. Imagine attacking somebody and watching their torso, their armor, break away. And then they're exposed to additional damage. I think it would just be the most hype, awesome moments ever. But instead, all we get is a fucking bit of font up on the screen, an X against whatever it is that's broken, and it looks identical and does no damage. Like, that's boring, dude. Make it break. And you don't have to do anything fancy to repair them. You just go, you press your souls, and boom, it's back to normal. But just imagine, like, the final hit of a kill, you break your sword on them. Or even better, you break your sword off in them. So if it kills them and your weapon breaks, the blade's embedded. Like, how cool would that be? So good, and it will never be in the game. But I think that would be fun. So the next one is more passives. Offhand weapons, broken weapons, not meeting the requirements to use something, a symbiosis between rings and gear. Essentially, more synergy. This to me is me at my most, shall we say, anally retentive. I love depth, I've always loved it. I'm not a diver, but you know. I like complicated things, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be quite simple, just with depth. And that's what this is. Having a weapon in your offhand is not a difficult thing to do, but having the knowledge to know that it has this ability, that is the distinction, and that is one of the things that these games seem to have lost a little bit. In Demon's Souls, there were certain weapons you could hold in your left hand that gave you a passive bonus. One of them increased your damage when you were low life by like 25%, 30%. It was a second red tier stone, and it was amazing. Give us that, give us more of that. Unique combinations of things to incentivize people holding different weapons, using different combinations. Broken weapons. Dark Souls 2 had a weapon that once you broke it, it became this super stupid, overpowered, multi-move-setted crazy thing. But it was cool as shit until everybody started using it. Let's have more of that. Have a weapon that gains some kind of crazy bonus when you break it. It's inferior to its full size in every single way except for one really eclectic, silly thing. And it could be so many stuff. Imagine a weapon, if you broke it, was crap in every way except for when you kick people, it did something unique. And something that was actually worthwhile having, like a super overpowered kick or something. It doesn't have to be that, that's just an example. But like a weapon that loses all of its ability to damage, all of its range, but it gets a really good backstab, like a backstab damage boost. Or even better, a weapon that gets a backstab damage boost, but you're not invincible while you do it. There's so many things you can do with this. It's endless, and it adds that RPG depth that things like Bloodborne were missing. Dark Souls 2 kind of had it, but a lot of it was on a cosmetic level, none of it was mechanical. Not meeting the requirements to use something is something as well that was quite specific. A lot of people on Demon's Souls, they use one of the best catalysts in the game, or talismans, I forget which one it is, and you don't have to reach the requirements for it because it still gives you all the benefits you need, and things like that. What this allows, for those not quite understanding why I want this, it gives people who have knowledge the ability to have an advantage over someone who doesn't. And to me, games should always be about knowledge. There should be an emphasis on execution and ability, but if you have knowledge, you should be able to substitute some of that and still occasionally win. And I think that's what these games really need, because we already had it with the completely convoluted statistics, the magics, all that kind of stuff. But if we embellish upon it, it can be so much broader, so much more interesting for the people who already understand that stuff. And the people who are intimidated by the levels and everything, were always going to be intimidated by the levels. They were never going to play it on a higher level anyway, because they weren't interested. These are the people that are asking what's the easiest way to get through the entire game and never have to play it again. They don't care about replay value or learning the nuance of things. They just want to get rid of it because it's this diseased hand that needs chopping off. So you're not affecting the newer audience, because they were never going to play anyway. And I think that's something that needs to be stressed here, folks. Like, they keep saying they're doing things to make these games more accessible to new players. In some ways, it's true, but there is a large percentage of people that have no intentions of ever playing these games, because the damage is already done. People already have this social opinion that the Souls games are these fucking super eclectic, insanely difficult Battletoads scrolling level bullshit nonsense, and they're not. But unfortunately, they're not Call of Duty either, or fucking FIFA. So it's just this skew, and it's really sad, because the developers are doing everything that they can to make these people pay attention, when these people never had any intentions of paying attention, and the only people who suffer are the ones who are already so deep they want more. But I think that could be great. And the symbiotic thing between rings and gear, it would be nice if you wore a specific ring and a specific piece of armour, that the two came together to give you some kind of bonus or benefit or something new. Like, I think that would be really, really interesting. And once again, it's depth, it's complexity, it's interesting. The next one is a big one. 0 barriers to progress. No bells to open anything, no Lord's Vessel cockblockery. If you are good enough to run the gauntlet, you should be able to enter the kiln in 30 minutes. So I'm using, of course, Dark Souls 1 as a reference here. I want to be able to go anywhere, and every game says you can, and they're always full of shit. Dark Souls 1. Regardless of how good you are, you can kill the 4 kings, but you can't get into Sen's Fortress until you ring bells. What is the point? Like, I have nothing against having to ring a bell to open a door, I think it's cool, but I also want to get to Anor Londo before I've done any of the beginning bullshit, because I can do it. I'm good enough to do it. We're good enough to do it. Let us do it. Like, I want to be able to go anywhere at the beginning so everybody can have their own routine, their own strategy, their own path. And just imagine the diversity to it. I'm not asking to literally be able to kill the boss in the first 10 minutes, although that would be cool as shit. But just don't cock blockers. Cock blockers with difficulty. And I don't mean fucking Verstat's corridor nonsense. I mean, if you can't get through Sen's Fortress, you can't get through Sen's Fortress. But don't put a door there that you can't get through regardless of what you do, unless you do some kind of crazy glitch jump. It should be available to you. For instance, the Tomb of the Giants. The Tomb of the Giants without a light source can be terrifying. It can be hilarious. It can be a mixture of both. If you know where you're going, it's kind of easier. If you don't, it's a hell zone. Sometimes, even when you know when you're going, it's still a nightmare because you can't see a damn thing. But you can do it. And that's my distinction. Instead of having this arbitrary, you know, completely totalitarian door bullshit of, oh my god, you don't have the Lord Vessel, fuck you! Have it, if you can do it, you can get there. Because I just think that makes it so much more interesting to watch, and it makes it so much more interesting to do, and that's just me. And I love that kind of stuff. That one is another one that is literally my personality and my gaming tastes on paper. So the next one is unique boss kills a la the Executioner Chariot Plunge. So if you don't know, folks, in Dark Souls 2, the Executioner Chariot can be killed in a very special, unique way that involves shooting arrows at him and not using the gateways to block his way and knock him off the chariot. And what happens is he gets stuck on the jump because he doesn't make it because he's injured, and you can go and hit him and he falls into a pit and dies. And it's a really cool little Easter egg type thing that I think is really nice. Now imagine if every boss had this really specific way of killing them. It doesn't have to be easy or fast, just make it interesting. I think that could be absolutely amazing, because I think it's cool. And anything that I think is cool, I want more of it all the time in my face. Then the next one kind of carries on from this. Boss weak spot and events. The Tower Knight falling over, the Adjudicator's Parrot, the tail cut weapons, the break the enemy weapon. Oh no, this is me adding something to it. So imagine if you could break an enemy weapon and it released a rare weapon. I think that'd be a really, really cool thing, because we didn't get tail cuts and we didn't get the evolution of a tail cut. Just imagine if you could use a certain weapon to attack the durability of a boss and get something super cool for doing it. Because I've already mentioned earlier, weapons and armor break visually. Now imagine if you could do that to bosses, like truly dominate them and completely change their moveset. That could be cool as shit. But just this idea that the bosses have this specific thing about them, and I think Bloodborne did this fantastically, where you could injure parts of their body and get extra damage, and you could parry and riposte them and all that kind of stuff, and then they could heal it and you could do it again. But I just want that on a next level. Like, imagine straight up knocking them off and having something cool happen, because we've all knocked, the Iron Golem off. We've all had the Taurus Demon fall off by accident occasionally, things like that. Now imagine if you could orchestrate it into something beastly, like a fatality from Mortal Kombat, where he falls off and he lands on something real nasty. That could be great. Could be super good. The next one is Parry the World. Bosses, gravity, everything. I want it to be Dark Souls 1's parry with multiple different animations, as well as old ones for the, you know, for the familiars. So this is just me at what I love to do. I love parrying. Always have, but it has to be Dark Souls 1. Fuck Dark Souls 2 parry. It's the least interesting thing in the world. They literally murdered how fun it felt by giving it a delay. It just baffles my mind, and there's people who prefer it, and those people to me are crazy. Bloodborne had a perfect parry for me, and you could parry bosses. However, you could not parry every attack, and you could not parry every boss. I want rid of that. I want every single thing parryable. Like, if it was up to me, I would give the boss a one-hit kill move that he did quite rarely, unless provoked somehow, but if you parried it, you instantly killed him. That's what I would do. That's the limit of how much I like this notion of risk, because I think that's just cool. I think it's too cool, but I'm on my own with that. The next one is differing roles. This is another similar one that I wanted in Dark Souls 2. Darkwood Grain Ring, Dark Souls 2 Ring of Fog thing where you can turn into smoke, the Bloodborne sidestep when you're locked on. I want a way to augment my rolling animation. I do not want it to give me any advantages. I want it all to be the same iframe wise, but I want them to look visually different. And I say this because the Darkwood Grain Ring is clinically broken. It is the best ring in the game. Before it was patched, it was even more broken than it already is. It gives you the lightest possible movement speed, it gives you additional iframes, and a larger evasion. Like, it is so broken. But if it didn't have all those things and it just had the flip and it was exactly the same statistics-wise as the other role, nobody would have bitched. They would have bitched about the weight thing because the weight thing was why it was so good as well, but no one would have attacked it the way they did. And as much as it's kind of suicidal to ask for Darkwood Grain Ring back, I would really like to see it back, just in a way where it isn't so ostracizing, where it isn't so just goddamn amazingly good. Like, because I love the cartwheels, I always have. The forward one looked kind of funky, but all the other ones I really liked. And of course, I really like the Bloodborne sidestep stuff. It's awkward to get used to because it's almost a completely different game when it comes to it fighting, but that is a cool move when you do it right. So the next one is another kind of masochistic, personal choice. Gravelord Covenant available from the start, that populates red phantom enemies and augments the area boss into a red phantom boss. All drop rates and drops are now legendary, souls acquired are multiplied tenfold. So this is a logical extension of the Gravelord Covenant and the Champions Covenant. There's a patch that you can, there's a mod on PC where you can self-Gravelord and you can play the game with the phantoms in. I was never able to make it work on my computer because I'm not very good with computers, and the game just crashed a lot. That's all that happened. I could never get it to work. And it frustrated me to no end because I've always wanted to play that type of game. I've added here that it also changes the bosses. I think that sounds cool as shit. Having a really, really dangerous version of boss. They would have to be balanced around certain factors. Like, I wouldn't want to give it Red Phantom life. I would just want it to have maybe higher aggression, slightly better speed, and more damage. Because if you think about it, and this is all based off Dark Souls 1 because that's what I use as a contrast here, I don't think there's a single boss on Dark Souls 1 that I couldn't kill comfortably if it had better damage, was slightly faster, and was a Red Phantom version of itself, because I know that game so well. I've done that game so many times. Like, those bosses are my bread and butter. Does it mean that they never kill me? Hell no. Of course they kill me. It's Dark Souls, but I don't think that's unrealistic at all. However, we don't know what this new game is, so it could be. This next one is something I think could be really cool, but also really unlikely as well. Each new game randomizes enemy placement. Each new game plus could moderate enemies also. Must be impeccably designed. So basically, the one thing I really like about Dark Souls is how once you learn the paths, the patterns, and the enemy locations, you know the game, and it never changes. You know the one thing that would really stir the pot up? If it did. Now, I've put must be impeccably designed because it has to be. This cannot be Dark Souls 2 or Scholar of the fucking First Sin, nonsensical clusterfuckery of just terrible enemy placements. This has to be finesseful, interesting, and cool. Less is more is the rule to this. But just imagine, every time you start a new game, it shuffles between, there could be 50 preset patterns, something like that. It could be more, it could always be random. It wouldn't bother me at all. Just this notion that you don't know what you're going to face. And I'm not saying you run into the Burg and there's 20 Black Knights, because that's not what it's about. I'm saying you go into the Burg, and in the place where everybody duels, there's one of those rock throwers from Sen's Fortress. And then you go past him, and there's an Anor archer, and you get rushed by 2 dogs or something while the archer's firing at you. It doesn't have to be stupid or difficult for difficulty's sake, just different and interesting. Like, imagine going through a fog door where the Taurus demon was, and it's not the Taurus demon that you're fighting. You know, it's Nito. Imagine Nito on that bridge. What the fuck would that even mean? It'd be easy, but, you know, weird. Like, there is so much room for just craziness, and if I could make that, I would. There's a mod, but I can't because I'm too stupid. But just the idea of a different experience every time, this kind of roguelike experience, would be fantastic. But it'd have to be so precise, because one slight deviation and you have Dark Souls 2, and it's miserable. So the next one, Necromancy. Summon minions, reanimate fallen foes, use a boss's minions against them. We've got Pyromancy, we've got all those other spells. I want me some Necromancy, and I want it to be really interesting. Imagine killing every enemy in an area, reanimating all of them, and taking them as a small army through a boss fog. Would that not be the coolest thing in the world? And of course, it would have to be balanced, but it could be so good. Like, a good example here, Nito once again. Terrible boss. Very easy, but he's got skeletons with him, and it's kind of hard to see some of his attacks because he's just this big shuffling shower curtain. Well, imagine if you kill the skeletons, even the big ones, like you drop down, you run past Nito, you get the big fellas on you and the little guys rolling at you, you somehow don't get gangbanged and clustered up, you get back to the entrance, you take them all down with a quick Wrath of God or something, and then you reanimate them, so you've got the 2 big skeletons, and is it 3 small skeletons or 2? So you're there with this little mob of skeletons, and you just bum rush Nito, and they kill him for you, and you stand there, you know, I don't know, doing Praise the Sun, or, you know, well, what is it in his face while he's getting stun-locked by a skeleton army. I just think that would be the coolest thing in the world, but it probably will never exist in anything. And that's it, guys. That is the end of my, rather modest this time, list of things that I think would be really cool added to a game series that I really like. And what do you want in? What would you think would be interesting? What crazy idea have you had that you'd love to see take effect? Feel free to share it, and as always, you take care now.